A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 154th episode of the Together for Education webinar brought to you by Notebook. Over 20 months ago, in April 2020, when the pandemic had just set in and schools had closed down, we at Notebook felt it was our duty to set up a platform for educators to connect meaningfully on, discussing problems they were facing with the rising need of digital education and online learning, and arrive at common solutions. Today, 154 episodes later, this platform has grown much bigger than we could have ever anticipated, all thanks to your love and support. We have discussed extremely curricular topics here like digital learning, NEP and assessments, extracurricular topics like sports, theatre, topics like school finance, and even evolved topics like mental health. Competency-based education has been a term that is often discussed in educational circles today. At first glance, the term seems a little strange. After all, isn't all education competency-based? However, as one dives deeper, one finds out the incredible amount of research that has gone into developing frameworks, pedagogy, and methodology around this crucial transformation, more than anything in the way we approach a child's education. Today, we have a panel of experts, educators with decades of experience to share their views, opinions, and experiences with competency-based education. Our first speaker on this topic today is Mr. Philip Burrett. Mr. Burrett retired as the Deputy Headmaster from the illustrious Doon School in Dehradun after 44 years of serving in education across various institutions. Mr. Burrett served the Doon School as Housemaster, Head of Department, Dean of Activities, Dean of Student Welfare, Deputy Headmaster, Second Master, and Acting Headmaster with great distinction. He also carried out a visioning exercise for the Doon School in the year 2011 through an in-depth study of a number of British public schools and various schools in the US. Mr. Burrett qualified as a leadership trainer at Wellington College, UK in the year 2000. He is also an athlete, an adventurer, and a naturalist, and we at Notebook are privileged to have Mr. Burrett as our senior advisor. Sir, thank you so much for being here today. Over to you.
Thank you, Shabayu, for that lovely introduction. I hope I'm audible, Shabayu.
Yes, sir, perfectly.
And a very good evening to you, Achin, Abhishek, and everyone at Notebook, and a very warm welcome to our esteemed panelists who I look forward to hearing from, and the guests who have tuned in. I must admit that competency-based education was something that was quite new to me, and so I had to do some reading and research on it, and I compiled something for the talk. So if I want to break this up into, competency, of course, is defined as the ability to perform a given task to an expected standard. So, somebody who has mastered the footwork for a forward and defensive, play in cricket would be competent in defensive, the defensive play. Another boy who might have passed his maths test with 45%, but has left out fractions and decimals, is not competent. He might have passed the exam, but he still lacks competency. He's got through. So another student who might have learned the chapter by rote is all at sea when asked to provide or submit a video essay or a digital portfolio to demonstrate their mastery. They will fail. Haven't we all met students who have done very well in college and schools in terms of grades and marks? But when one talks and interacts with them, they fall very, very short of being educated. Their linguistic skills, for example, or their social skills, or their skills in analyzing or problem solving have just not been developed in the context of the school. Now, employers often say that students that come from certain schools are not employable, and that they have to be given a complete refresher course and have a sort of buddy to take them along, because they don't have the skills that is needed by the company or the office. And that's why we have such a large number of uneducated, skilled and unskilled employed people in this country, as opposed to the educated, unskilled and unemployable youth of our country. So for decades, the path of a student was pretty straightforward. You graduate from high school, go to college, get a job. With the advent of competency-based learning, there came a colossal shift in learning in a new way. Now, there were newer pathways that concentrated on learning skills. For example, get a job, learning a better skill while employed in that job to get another job, learning new skills and moving up, moving forward. And that's how it process, that's how people improve. They learn on the job. Now, the benefits of competency-based education are massive, but they focus on three major areas. They're learner-centric, they believe in differentiation, and learning outcomes. Competency-based education or knowledge-based training is a shift from the traditional based education because it is a skill-based approach that shatters the assumption that learning is time-bound and that it happens in the classroom. Now, rather highlighted research-based learning, demonstration of mastery and personalized learning. This is what it focuses on, all aiming at making students lifelong learners. And the benefits of competency-based education has made huge impact on many, many learners, many schools. Now, it is often called proficiency-based learning or mastery-based learning or outcome-based learning, performance-based learning, but whatever you call it, the system, the entire system of instruction, assessment, grading, and academic reporting are based on a students demonstrating that they have learned the knowledge and skills that is expected of them at that age. Now, for example, the knowledge and skills that are expected to learn, they progress through their education. In schools, competency-based systems are expected learning standards to differentiate academic expectations and define competency. Now, in a given course, subject, or a grade level, the general goal of competency-based learning is to ensure that students are acquiring the knowledge and skills that are deemed to be essential to know to pass that exam. Now, for example, in practice, competency-based learning can take a very wide variety of forms, as Abhishek said, and as Eshbayu had mentioned. There's no single model, and it's used universally from junior school to up to college levels. Now, why it's different from the normal tradition is that students may or may not acquire proficiency in a given course or subject that they pass with credits, but they get promoted to the next class. Now, it may be possible for students to pass their exams without acquiring important knowledge and skills. And in extreme cases, for example, a student may be awarded a high school diploma, but still not be able to read, write, and do maths at a basic level. A competency-based diploma would be a diploma awarded to students only after they have met certain standards of competency, which have been decided upon or laid down. Now, while the goal of competency-based learning is to ensure that most students learn what they are expected to learn, the approach can also provide educators with more detailed or fine-grained information about students' learning, which can help them more precisely identify academic strengths and weaknesses, as well as their specific concepts and skills that the student has yet to master. For example, instead of receiving a letter grade or an assessment or for a test, each of which may address a variety of standards, students are graded on specific learning standards, each of which describes the knowledge and skills a student is expected to acquire. Now, proficiency or competency-based learning may argue that the approach greatly improves the chances that students will learn the most critically important knowledge, concepts, and skills that they will need throughout their lives. And that competency-based learning can help to eliminate persistent learning gaps. Now, what are some of the advantages of competency-based learning? The first is that the student learns at his own pace, because it puts the ownership of learning into the student, into his lap, and lets them meet the certain big picture of understanding. Students simply don't just move on with a big gap in their understanding. Rather, they work at their own pace. until they prove their mastery, and get and achieve certain desired standards. The second is it's very, very flexible, because a dropout student who wants to finish school much later can join at that point without having to sit in class and do what he already knows. He can come in at any point, get the mastery levels, and pass. There is no set semesters, rigid classes. Rather, students control and steer their learning through the hands-on projects and assessments. The third advantage would be it's a ticket to gain real-world experience, because the goal of higher education is to groom students to becoming effective leaders in their chosen fields beyond accomplishing grades. The other one is it's a very personalized way of teaching, because there is one-to-one personalized care and support based on a student's individual learning needs. Teachers in CBE develop meaningful, engaged projects for their students to work together and giving them feedback all the time, revising their work to hit the mastery standards that they set. Also, there's a lot of timely support, because in contrast to traditional schools where students have to fail before they receive remedial support, in CBE, the student gets additional support even during the process of building his knowledge and skills. The formative assessments, along with the effective constant feedback, are one of the strongest aspects of CBE. Again, another advantage is that there's novelty in assessment and grading, because it differs from the traditional grading system, and which focuses on summative end of year assessments, and it focused on memorization, application, and comprehension. Whereas in CBE, which is totally against the notion of assessing a student, at some point, the CBE focuses on assessment along the way, which is called formative assessment. Now, this is used by a set of competency-based tools and formative assessments, which give students feedback. The other thing is, it's a different strategy for communicating progress. While in traditional schools, we focus on periodic reports, subject grades, mark sheets, which is the outcome of tests and assignments. In competency-based learning, it believes that the standard grading policies kill the lifelong desire for a student to learn. And therefore, it focuses on mastery-based grading by giving effective feedback and guidance till a student demonstrates that proficiency. Now, some of the problems that schools would face if they were going to, introduce this in their curriculum. The first is, when schools transition to a competency-based system, it can mean significant changes in how a school operates and how it teaches students, thus affecting everything from the school's education philosophy, culture, etc., to its method of instruction, testing, grading, reporting, promotion, and graduation. Report cards may have to be redesigned. Schools may use different grade scales, such as replacing letter grades with brief descriptive statements, such as does not meet or partially meets or exceeds certain standards that are set. The second criticism is that critics may take up the issue that learning standards of competency-based education are very difficult to formulate, because at the end of the day, when a student applies for college, who is going to set those competency levels? And so that's another point. Who is going to lay down the rules about what is competency? What is the competency a student needs to acquire? Then, of course, in our country, in our schools, our parents are very, very, there's a competition, they're highly competitive. Most parents want to see class ranks and grades. They want to see where their kids fare vis-a-vis other students. Has he come first in class? Has he come third in class? And CBE may not go down well, because competency-based learning systems eliminate this competitive dimension. So students who are high achievers may not like it. Also, parents don't like to see their kids lagging behind and having to spend more time on, say, geography and less time in maths. They may be good at maths, so they're going through it much faster, but they may have extra classes and longer periods with, say, history or geography. They don't like that. Parents even shy away from getting their children tested for learning disabilities when schools approach them. So parents might not like their children to proceed at different paces. They like it when they join school and after 1 year, they go to another class, whether they're competent or not. But competency-based learning is about going at different paces. Now, certain critics may argue that this transition will require an already overburdened teacher to spend large amounts of time planning and preparing and training these teachers. So when I was in training college, I read about a concept called the Dalton Plan. The Dalton Plan briefly is where you don't have classes like class 7A and 7B and 7C. You have teacher rooms. So Mr. X will have a room, the maths teacher, and Mrs. Y will have a room, history teacher. And the children move from room to room. The teachers don't move from 7A to 7B. The children move, which means that you have to have a little 5-minute gap after every lesson or period where the children move. It's a good idea because it gives the children a chance to stretch around and chat. It's not one class running into other. And this was done because a student might want to do extra maths. So he does more periods of maths and he may do much less in English if he's a good English student. So a student might be class 10 level in maths while he's still in class 6. And he might be class 4 level in English because he is challenged in English. So the idea being that by the time you get to class 12, which is school leaving, you are meeting the required standards that universities require. That's the Dalton Plan, and something like competency-based learning. You have to learn to become competent. Finally, I'd like to say that apart from academics, there are a lot of other competencies that children need to have or to show before they leave school. These are not competencies based on academics. These are competencies like ironing a shirt or running a washing machine or fixing a car, changing a tire, cooking, writing a CV, facing an interview. And I think most schools should have, apart from the academics, a non-academic but very important competency list that they have to acquire before they leave school. I know schools that do not give a leaving certificate till the child can live in the wilderness alone for a week, camping and cooking. I know schools abroad that do not give you a certificate. So this is the competency that school requires. So having said this, I hope I have made some of my ideas clear. And with that, many thanks for listening. And over to you, Shubhayu.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction to this topic. You had started off by saying that this was new to you and you had to do your research, but it shows what phenomenal capacity, sir, you have of marrying your experiences of 4 decades with the new things that you learn, because I think you gave a fantastic overview of the positives and questionable parts of competency-based education. Thank you. Thank you so much for this. Our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is Achin Bhattacharyya. Achin is the founder and CEO at Notebook. A chartered accountant by training, Achin was a director at Deloitte prior to starting Notebook. He has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte. Achin is a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales, a fellow of the ICAI, and a member of CPA Australia and CPA Ireland. He is also the recipient of the prestigious Indian Achievers Award. An avid reader and a passionate traveler, Achin has keen interests in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He is a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce, and also contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He is also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to their brand strategies. Achin, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Shubha, am I audible?
Yeah, Achin, loud and clear.
I once again welcome all of you to today's session. I remember a very appropriate quote by Buckminster Fuller, an American architect, author, inventor, and futurist, who once said, and this is so appropriate for this particular topic, once said that we are called to be the architects of future, not its victims. Now, knowledge, the way we look at it, and I'm sure all of you here in this forum, senior educators, would agree with me that knowledge is power, and education is the foundation of sustainable progress. As Benjamin Franklin once said, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. As a country, we have reached a unique point in history. Indeed, if you look at India as a country, no doubt about it, it has reached a unique point in history where its social and economic progress needs to be sustained and sustainable with a proportionate progress of human resource parameters of its population. Most importantly, education is one of the elements of human progress and an evolution that needs to be looked at more closely. And why so? Because today, if you look at numbers, India has been a story of mixed success. Now, if you look at the entire journey from 1947 till now on the educational front, of course, a lot has been done. There's no doubt about it. Monumental progress, humongous effort. But then again, considering the fact that as a country, we are home to 22% of the world's population, but also a substantial portion of the world's illiterate population. Today, if you look at literacy rates, still, long way to go. And when I say literate, when we discuss this term about education, of course, we not only discuss about a mere tick in the box, but about quality as well. Now, coming to this very aspect, among the children in schools in India, the critical question has been of quality of education. Has the capacity building exercise, because we need to acknowledge the fact that the prime challenge has always been capacity building, looking at the huge population that needs to be catered to. But the question is that has the capacity building exercise of India's education sector been adequately followed up by setting of high standards of education? In a country like ours, with massive population, policymakers can often be obsessed with the quantity and scale of resolution of the issue of illiteracy. I was going through a research paper in a published document, I think it was done in September 2019, by a professor of Cambridge University. And I think, of course, under the aegis of the ministry. And I was looking at some observations and some recommendations. And one thing is very clear, that the unfortunate casualty in the process often is the nature and kind of education that could lead to independent thinking, critical reasoning, creativity, beside tools to equip the student to tackle the challenges of life. And here again, we are discussing about large numbers. We're discussing about the entire pyramid. I understand senior educators in this forum, they come from institutions of repute. But we are discussing about the country as a whole. We are discussing about all the states. We are discussing about all the schools and students. There's no doubt about it that the culture of rote learning and an examination-oriented attitude that senior educators in this forum has time and again mentioned, that this examination-oriented attitude to resources and concepts has led to a very, very parochial and skewed understanding of subjects and their application. Today, if you look at United Nations Substantial Development Goal 4, it is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education, and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Even if you look at the fact that our journey since independence, successive commissions, their recommendations, and the fact that Indian Constitution was amended in 1976 to include the topic of education in the concurrent list for the first time. And for the first time, India as a nation had a uniform national policy of education only as recent as 1986. Of course, after that, successive policies were aware about the kind of positivity, the kind of foresight that has come in with the new education policy, of course, in the annual. But it wasn't until the turn of millennium that a major shift in the way we looked at education in India happened. Education went from being a directive principle of state policy to becoming a fundamental right. Now, today in this context, if you look at competency-based learning, it's like thinking beyond the box, thinking out of the box. The kind of learning where every individual skill or learning outcome is the fundamental unit of learning experience. The kind of learning which is learner-focused, where the instructor is more of a facilitator than an instructor, which allows the student to learn individual skills that they find challenging at their own pace. But I was mentioning some of these aspects, like for instance, in summative examination and testing, very often students find it challenging to learn at their own pace because, of course, being part of a group. While in competence, in majority of things, mastery of each competence is required. So undoubtedly, it's a much more practical, hands-on system. There's no doubt about it. Data-based, adaptive, performance-oriented, the set of integrated processes that facilitate, measure, record, certify within the context of flexible time parameters. The demonstration of known, explicitly stated, agreed upon learning outcomes that reflect the successful functioning in life roles. The focus is far more on the application-oriented approach, which is so important. And of course, there are certain essential, desirable, and related elements. The question is, what do students learn? When we discuss about competence-based learning, what do students actually learn? Competency-based courses based solely on particular learning outcomes that are called competencies or tasks that have been verified as being essential for developing critical thinking and reasoning or successful employment in the occupation for which the student is being trained. If you look at things from a higher education perspective, not necessarily from K-12 perspective, pre-employment trainings, for instance, apprenticeship, internship, etc. Now, on the other hand, when we're discussing about traditional programs, undoubtedly based on educational material and resources, I think self-explanatory, all of you are well aware. But the question is, how do students learn? Now, in competency-based learning courses, student-centered learning resources are designed to help them master each and every competency. Now, there are two very important elements associated with this. When we say student-based learning resources, first, resources are designed such that the student can acquire knowledge, acquire competencies, and knowledge at their own pace. So very important, because not necessarily every student will learn at the same pace. Second, a system of periodic feedback throughout the learning process, where there are being opportunities for students to correct their performance if need be. Thus, in traditional programs, teachers are mainly and primarily relying upon to deliver most of the teaching, training, and instruction. Of course, instructor-led systems. Methods, very natural, conventional methods, lecture, demonstration, discussion. So process naturally being fairly instructor-centered, and students have very little control over the pace of instruction, over the pace of learning. Naturally, it somehow and somewhere caters to the average, has to be. And also feedback on progress usually is not very continuous or periodic. there are practical challenges that we need to acknowledge and appreciate. Now, when do students proceed from task to task? Another very important question, because if there are multiple tasks and we expect students to be proficient in each and every competency, when and how do students progress? In competency-based learning, students are given enough time. I think Burrett referred to this very wonderfully. With reasonable bounds to master one competency or learning outcome before moving to the next. Naturally, on the other hand, traditional program, as we are aware, studying in a group, students are expected to spend the same amount of time on a course element or on a particular subtopic or on a particular section. So the group as a whole moves from one element, one topic to the next. So naturally, for some students, it may be too soon. For some, it may be too late. But what happens? What happens if students have learned each task, each competency? In competency-based learning model, each student is required to perform each competency or task to a certain preset fixed standard, and to a level of proficiency to receive credit for the same. And here, kindly note that we focus on the term perform. On the other hand, in traditional programs, performance of a student is compared to a group. Somewhere there is always the concept of comparison at a peer-to-peer level. And here again, we are discussing at a more holistic and global perspective, not necessarily confined to K-12 or confined to, our country. Students are allowed to move to the next unit, even if they may marginally master the current unit. So naturally, in such programs, students can pass without having proficiency or mastery on a particular task, on a particular competency. Now, there are certain principles of competency-based education, a key principle, which I think are very important. Now, coming to a few of them, which I think are key. First of all, importance of instruction and time. Any student can master any competency at a high level of mastery if provided with high quality of instruction and sufficient time. I think this sufficient time is very important. And there's no standard definition. It will vary from student to student, naturally, depending on his or her level of interest, level of inputs, guidance, etc. The kind of time you devote. Second, I think the other aspect is reflection of ability in performance. A student's ability for learning a task will not predict how well the student learns the task. I think this is very important. Now, why so? Because these two principles highlight that by giving student the right kind of instruction and sufficient time, I would like to humbly focus and reiterate the importance of this phrase, sufficient time. Most students can be made to reach proficiency and mastery of tasks and competencies. So that means that the ability of each student need not be reflected in the student's performance. Students who are taking time to grasp a particular concept may be able to learn as much as high-performing students and even retain it with some additional time and additional help in this particular context, in this particular regard. So that's the cornerstone of competency-based learning model is that the ability of the students should only predict how long it takes to attain proficiency. So if I compare two students, A and B, depending on level of interest, ability, whatever be the nomenclature, at the end of the day, even if a particular student is being able to grasp the concept quicker than his or her friend, not necessarily the student who is taking more time will not be able to master it. He or she will definitely master it. All that the student will need is little more help and little more time, self-paced learning. Third principle is errors in education environment. Now, individual students' differences in level of proficiency and mastery of competency or task are not caused as much by the characteristic of student, as much by, at times, factors beyond control in the environment, overall ecosystem. I was going through a study by Bloom, which is illustrated that many of the individual differences in how much students learn are caused by errors in the education system, not by an intrinsic quality possessed by the student. Very conveniently, we may label him or her. It's very convenient for the society to label him or her as someone who's not up to it. But honestly speaking, I think if a student fails, the entire system fails. Now, certain factors that have been shown to influence how much students learn. First, how many necessary learning fundamentals and prerequisites a student already has. Second, what kind of attitude the student has about the learning experience. Is the student receptive enough? And here again, we are not discussing necessarily from a K-12 context. And third, of course, the length and quality of instruction. Because the competency-based education model addresses all these elements in a very positive way. In a very, very, very positive way. Of course, fourth, again, we'll come to capabilities. Rather than being good or bad, slow or fast learner, most students can become very similar to, be very similar to his or her peer, being able to grasp concept, in spite of the fact that he or she is taking more time. Of course, more motivation may be needed. Of course, teaching here plays a very big role. Undoubtedly, no system can work without esteemed educators. Very, very important role. Quality of instruction, kind of instruction, very, very important roles. Other is, like, given the importance of instruction, because again, if you look at competency-based learning model, instruction plays a very important role. Student may be learning in a pace that he or she decides. But then again, hand-holding, mentorship is so important. So instruction is designed around certain essential elements in such models. First, students are presented with some sort of cue. This can be audiovisual or some other form. Second, student participates by actually responding, applying, or doing something. So student is not a passive, recipient of knowledge, but active participant. Third, he or she periodically, as a learner participates, he or she is periodically reinforced to ensure that correct performance continues. Fourth, of course, feedback plays a very important role. Corrective measure, not only feedback. Then I was going through this something very interesting with regard to competency-based learning. I was trying to find out the practical implication, the fact that how measurable it is. Now, if you look at the Program for International Student Assessment, PISA, which all of you are aware, an international assessment that assesses educational policies and framework to determine competency-based learning. That is the objective. Competency-based learning, independent thinking, of course, critical reasoning. Now, it was first performed in the year 2000 by OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Now, the whole objective is to measure the scholastic performance of 15-year-old children in areas of mathematics, science, and reading. Now, you may ask, why 15-year-old student? First question that came to my mind, why 15-year-old? Why not 14? Why not 16? OECD says this is because in most countries, at the age of 15, students decide whether or not they want to continue their education to the next level, and therefore need to be equipped for adult life at that state, somewhere around 15 years. Now, the aim of the study is to provide comparable data, if you compare, with a view to enabling countries to improve their educational policies, targets, outcome, and it specifically measures problem-solving skill, cognitive abilities, etc. Now, PISA draws on content. Again, this is really important because I was trying to find out that if you are assessing outcomes across so many countries, how do you draw a common denominator? How do you draw a common curriculum? But PISA draws on content that can be found in curriculums across the world. and looks at students' ability to apply that knowledge and skills and to analyze, reason, communicate effectively as they examine. Because as far as PISA is concerned, they examine, interpret, and solve problems. The PISA does not prescribe or promote any of the curriculum. Not necessarily that, okay, curriculum of country X is being promoted. Now, if you look at the question bank, if you look at the kind of questions that are being asked, multiple choice testing, because it's more reliable, efficient, supports more scientific data-driven analysis. Again, variety of formats. If you look at MCQs also, including highlighting of a word within a text, connecting pieces of information, making multiple selection from drop-down menus. In addition, typically up to 1/3 of questions in PISA assessment are open-ended. Students also answer a background questionnaire, providing information about themselves, their attitude to learning, and their homes, because in order to understand what is the correlation, the kind of family the student comes from, is he or she a first generation learner, second generation learner, and what is its impact? In addition, school principals are given a 20-minute questionnaire about their school. Now, countries and economies can choose to administer several optional PISA questionnaires as well. So it's very clear that the PISA again focuses on competency-based learning. So this is a very, I'll say, practical application. Because PISA has a very unique way that it looks at things like literacy. Instead of examining mastery over a particular specific school curriculum, PISA is assessing students' ability to apply that knowledge, skills, to analyze, reason, communicate. So I think the focus is very different. It's far more on applicational knowledge. So I think these are a few things that I wanted to discuss. I thank all of you for giving me a patient hearing. There's no doubt about it that as a country, we have made huge progress, humongous progress over the years. But I think this kind of emerging areas and the kind of thoughts that we hear from senior educators in our forum, it really motivates and inspires each and every one of us. And today we have a wonderful panel here today. Very senior educators with years of experience. And I really look forward to hear from them on this wonderful topic. I thank all of you again. Over to you, Shubhai.
Thank you, Achin. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Achin mentioned, we do have a fantastic panel lined up for you. But before we start with the discussion, a little bit about us here at Notebook. We at Notebook are an EdTech platform. We create short videos that pertain to the school curriculum. Every topic from every subject for every class, right from class 1 to class 12, is covered in Notebook. Now, these videos come in handy in two cases. One, when you as a teacher want to give your students a visual introduction to a particular topic, you can play these videos at the start of your class. Whether you're conducting the class online or offline, these videos can be at your beck and call. The second use case is where a student is studying at home and has access to these same videos on their personal devices, be it a laptop or a smartphone. And they can watch these videos over and over again as many times as they want. As you would have been listening right now, watching talk about self-paced learning, that is exactly what Notebook promotes. What I will do now is play you a short clip of one of the Notebook videos so that you know what our product looks like.
Famous mathematician Professor G.H. Hardy came to visit the Indian mathematical genius S. Ramanujan in a taxi whose number was 1729. In their conversations, Hardy commented that 1729 was a dull number, to which Ramanujan disagreed to explain that 1729 is the smallest number that can be expressed as a sum of two cubes in two different ways. Since then, such numbers like 1729, 4104 and others have been named Hardy-Ramanujan numbers. Hello and welcome to Notebook. In this video, we will learn about the properties of cubes and cube roots.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you just saw, a notebook video typically starts with what we call an interest builder, a short anecdote or a story that gives someone a context to what is being taught. To give you another example, Achin just now gave you a quote from Buckminster Fuller, the famous architect. I'm sure this is common knowledge to all the chemistry teachers in our audience today. Buckminster Fuller once developed a tetrahedron-based football-like structure that helped scientists decode how the C60 carbon allotrope is actually structured, which is why that element is today called fullerene in his memory. Well, with that bit of trivia, it's now time to introduce the wonderful panel that we have with us today. We are privileged to have with us Ms. Priyanka Barara, who has an experience of 24 years in school education. She is currently the principal of the Salwan Public School in Rajendra, Nagar. She has represented the school as a participant of Australia-India Bridge 2019, a 10-day immersive program that promoted intercultural learning supported by AEF and selected only 7 schools from India. She also led the school to achieve prestigious British Council Award 2019 to 2022 in December 2019. She guided the school team to prepare content for CBSE Diksha app and received approval by CBSE on the proposals that were sent. She achieved a position in the top 10 for the schools in North Delhi Challengers Group in the Times School Survey 2017, received the Best School Award in Holistic Development by Education Today 2018, was awarded the Best School for Use of Technology at ISA Dubai 2018, and was awarded the Best School for After-School Programs at Eldrock India again in 2018. She was awarded by the Lions Club Association on Teachers' Day for outstanding contribution towards underprivileged children and received a certificate of recognition in January 2019 from the Director of Education Northwest B Zone 13 to acknowledge success of organizing zonal taekwondo competition where 300 students from her zone participated. She has also received the Outstanding Leader Award by Zamit in September 2019. Ma'am, thank you so much for being a part of the panel today. We are privileged to have you here. We're also privileged to have Dr. Satyajit Hota, who's the principal of the Allons Public School in Bemetara, Chhattisgarh. He holds an MSc, an MPhil, a PhD, along with an MEd degree. He's had 7 papers published in international journals, and his research referee was Professor Misabu Ogawa from Saitama University in Japan. He has been awarded as the best educationist and best principal amongst many other that he has received. He's also our first Guinness Book of World Record holder that we've ever had on this platform. Sir brings to the table more than 30 years of teaching experience. Sir, thank you so much for being here today. It's a privilege to have you. We also have with us Mrs. Amita Dutta, who is a dynamic professional with more than 20 years of experience in managing various curriculums and teaching programs in CBSE and ICSE schools in different areas. She has joined the pan-Indian organization Treehouse High School in the year 2016 and has worked hard and brought a remarkable change in uplifting the quality in academics and administration. Apart from being the principal of Treehouse High School, Virar, she is the secretary of Thane Palghar Sahodaya Schools Complex, a group of 25 CBSE schools. She is appointed as a resource person by CBSE to train principals of different regions on pedagogical leadership. She has also conducted training on art-integrated learning at Navodaya Leadership Institute at Goa for government teachers. She is committed, focused, organized, and a self-driven professional with extensive experience in both academics and administration across reputed schools. She is innovative, creative, and has excellent communication skills. Ma'am, thank you so much for being here today. It's a privilege to have you on the platform. Let me stop my share and I shall switch on my camera. Once again, a very good evening and thank you so much for being here. It's indeed our privilege to have all of you here. I can see all of you on cameras. Thank you so much for that. Ms. Barara, thank you so much for being here. Let me come to you first. We have been listening to both Mr. Burrett and Achin talk about competency-based education. Now, theoretically, this sounds fine. The problem is we are a country of 1.3 billion people. At 280 million students, including government schools and schools of all forms, we are perhaps the world's largest school education system. In a system that thrives on very personalized, very individual level care, do you think competency-based education has legs in India?
Yes, it has. But then I'll be very unrealistic if I say that we will not have to do any groundwork to achieve that. Because we have been, as Mr. Philip very clearly, elucidated how we have been learning over the years. With very, very fixed parameters and fixed ideas, where the main goal is reaching a college, getting a high school degree, getting a high school certificate and a college degree, and focus on job, right? So the entire system of focusing on marks and content has to be moved away. To be able to do that, we need to work on how we are training our teachers. When we train our teachers with this sound training on how to focus on competence, what exactly does it mean? Because when we talk about competency, I mean, a lot of people would still misunderstand it with marks. So that chain of thought needs to be broken first of all. Address that. Focus on how teachers can reach out to children, because the positive engagement that a teacher brings into the classroom actually builds the competence of the child. What is happening right now is, or what has been happening is, what has been happening over the years is that everybody has been confusing competence with the marks obtained. So once we reach that stage, that is where we will begin the groundwork of achieving a competence-based learning. And as it is, we are a diverse country with large numbers coming from different backgrounds, different learning levels. Therefore, each learning level has to be addressed differently to be able to make them reach to that competence-based learning. We cannot have one single program under which everybody can be trained. We need to understand the needs of a community, the needs of an area, the needs of a school, and then train people accordingly. And then, because unless the teacher is very confident about what she is doing, you cannot convince the parent. The parent will constantly keep looking at the marks, at the rank, as Mr. Philip said, and then at the college. We will not be able to see what we are building on. So first, we need to make our teachers very, very confident about what they are doing, how they are doing, and how we reach out. So that's how I, look at it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Dr. Hota, can I come to you next? Sir, I would request you to please put on your camera. Thank you so much, sir. First of all, it's the first time I'm speaking to somebody who holds a Guinness Book of World Records, so quite thrilled over there. Sir, also, if I may ask, we have been hauled up as a country for having a very bad pupil to teacher ratio. I mean, it's a different issue with reputed CBSE schools, but in government schools or even in schools in tier 2 cities, we see classrooms with 60 students in them. Now, in such a situation, sir, how do you envision that a teacher would give that student an individual level attention that can enable competency-based learning?
Good evening to all the educators. Is it audible to you, sir?
Yes, sir, perfectly.
Yeah. You have told about, you are asking exactly the right questions, that some schools where there is a number of students is very large. In this texture, how we will apply particularly CBE. My dear educators, one thing just I'm sharing you, before me, number of educators has told very beautifully elaborated about the CBE, though there is no single agreed upon about CBE, because it is a very, very, variable context as per the ethological and ethnological as well as geographical strata of the country. But again, I am saying you, it is the individual's capacity of performing a task, what Philip sir has told, but performing a task successfully in professional, in educational, and other life context by using three things already told, that the knowledge, the skill, and the abilities. Whenever we are talking about the knowledge conceptual and theoretical outstanding of the subject, a very visible characteristics, and it's a, it is only possible when there will be child-centric focus, should be child-centric. But to develop through a good competency-based education in the classroom context. We are saying about the skill. Skill is also measurable. It is also observable. But what observable? Observable of proficiency. And this proficiency we learn through training, through our experience. So training is required. A visible characteristics, though it is visible characteristics for the development through competency-based education, and that should be good competency-based. And abilities, whenever we are talking, it is a vast underlying capability. It is the latent talent. It is essential to learn and apply knowledge and skills. It is hidden characteristics. If you will take our Vedantic philosophy, and still today we are saying Vidya Amritam Asnute, Sa Vidya Ya Vimuktaye, or we are saying Vidyaya Karma Koshalam. Means we are talking about all these things, but the mastery for the masters first require. The teachers require the mastery, and it will get by training only. My dear, since 30 years, I have a great pain and I am carrying it, being a teacher. Why, you know? If you look to the total spectrum of education, then what we are getting, if you'll go to a hospital, suppose after the OT, operation theater going and operation done, and the patient is dead, the doctor is not taking any money or anything from that patient, they're excused. But can you imagine when I'm talking about 30 years of experience, then what I'm getting, the failure students, they are only paying to us. Maximum money is coming from the failure students. And you know, Sir has told very beautifully that we are not demonstrating our mastery, because we are talking about competency-based learning, but competency-based learning is also proficiency-based learning. Competency-based education is also our mastery-based education. So who will demonstrate the mastery? Let we well define the competencies learning outcomes, which is articulated and empower the students, energize the students, and educate the students in such a way. So clearly defined learning outcomes, flexibility of time frame, multiple pedagogies we have to apply as per the requirement of the students, variety of engaging context. So my dear, again I am saying it is the high time for all of us to understand where we the school teachers are standing and where my school is present. It is the stage one. Then we have to try to understand first about the competency. If it is stage two, then we have to discuss to consider it. And stage three, we have to plan to start. And if I am in stage four, then I have to go for the providing few grades and in few subjects. And I am stage five, then providing to all subjects, all grades. The ultimatum is the tracking the students, the assessment side. It is very important. So tracking time to tracking competency, because earlier Philip sir has told that we are also we are very busy, and whole the lifespan, I am saying you 30 years I have spent to complete the curriculum, and we are giving only competition, not the competency. We are developing that environment, but this is the first time we are talking about the competency-based education. Maybe we may say sometime that traditionally we are going on and now it is splitting out and we are modified and we are talking about all these factors, but it is the pain of a teacher. Again, I am saying that competency as a map of learning or map to learning, that we have to understand. Ongoing assessment with additional support, that is most important. My dear, for this thing, whenever we will go, then a lot of problems will be arise without any question mark, but we have to come out with these problems. Students advance after they have mastered and skilled. Learning goals are centered around a student need. All students receive differentiated support. Assessment is embedded throughout, and different corners of the society also played the role. So student performance is determined by individual growth and mastery. Even if you go to the ancient era, what we have told, Acharjat Padamadatte Padang Shishya Samayedhaya Sabrahma Charibhyo Padang Kalakramena. So in that time also, in the Nalanda and others also, we have seen, Takasila has also told, the teachers evaluate or teachers assessment will go for 1/4 topic, self-assessment 1/4, friends and peer groups through 1/4, and time assessment with the society and all 1/4. So it is there. But the pain is why? Why we are suffering? Jnanena abritam jnanam tena mujjanti jantava. Humanity is suffering, not because the condition, but the ignorance which covered the intellect. This is most important. But again, I am saying that this tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dairy desert sand of dead habits. Let's stop this race. Stop the race, and we should go for the grace. Let's stop the competition, and we should go for the competence and contribution. My dear, then only our head will be held high and mind will be without fear. And we, the teachers, will be transported or transferred among the students. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll, and there will be capable to say, my student, I am the master of my fate, and I am the captain of my soul. Is it not so, sir?
Wonderful, sir. Fantastic. I mean, I read in your CV that you are a MSc, but the kind of knowledge, the spectrum of your knowledge, sir, across topics is absolutely astounding. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us.
Thank you.
And sir, I think one of the first steps to solving a problem is to identify that there is a problem. And when you say as a teacher, there's this pain inside, I think that is the first step to reaching a solution. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, sir.
Yes, sir. It is much more painful because, when in this pandemic, we are watching within the paper, the teachers leaving the teaching or educational profession, and they have come as a vendor. Some teachers are left their job, the educational arena and business. Can you imagine how much painful it is? We don't know even if ABC or the literacy of finance. We don't know how to go and sustain our life because the teachers themselves are not competent. Then how we will go for the contribution for the country? How we will transform to the students? It is not painful for a teacher. So let's,
Thank you so much.
it is a mega mission for us. And now the compact room is opened. We have seen the vistas as the saints of Swami Vivekananda, as the saints of great poet Rabindranath Tagore, the Vishwaguru. But he is saying, Antaramam vikasita karo antarataro he, nirmal karo sundara karo ujjala karo he. So our hearts should be open. Whole universe should come and focus to our center. Why we will not go up to that level? That is the demand and it's the need of time. And let's celebrate by the name of the students' achievement, students' competency level of achievement. And that we want competency-based education, where they will able to say that I am the master of my fate and captain of my show.
Wonderful. Fantastic, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mrs. Dutta, if I may come to you next. Ma'am, we've been hearing a lot about competency-based education. And as a series of webinars, we have covered quite a few other topics as well. Now, from the very novice eyes that I am looking at it through, this seems to go a little against when we talk about multidisciplinary education. We want today a student to learn across disciplines. At the same time, we are saying we want the student to be proficient and confident and develop competencies in a particular topic based on his or her own pace and personalized. Ma'am, how do these coexist?
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, perfectly.
Yeah, I was hearing all the speakers today, and competency-based learning overall, I would like to say, it cannot be implemented on all the students. Though we are thinking, we are aligning that, yes, it is not required that you have to, say that you have to pass this exam through rote learning, and then, you need to continue, you can move on to next class. It is not that. The concept behind competency-based education is simple. Learning is best measured by students demonstrating mastery of learning rather than the number of hours spent in a classroom. Competency-based learning begins by identifying specific competencies of skills and enables learner to develop mastery of each competency or skill at their own pace, usually when they work with a mentor. Learners can develop just the competencies or skills they, feel that they need, or can combine a whole set of competencies into a full qualification, such as a certificate, diploma, or increasingly a full degree. Now you see, competency-based education is a replacement of the systems, structures, and pedagogies of the traditional system. Competency-based education is driven by the equity seeking need to transform our educational system so all students can and will learn through full engagement and support, and through authentic, rigorous learning experiences inside and outside the classroom. Students need to learn academic knowledge and the skills and dispositions to apply it, such as growth mindset, self-regulation, social emotional learning, and habits of success. Learning happens anytime, anywhere. Deeper learning is a collaborative, and it is also socially embedded. Transparency of learning, expectations, and assessments result is essential for creating a culture of learning and also its accountability. Now, learners work individually. Okay, if learners can demonstrate that they have already, done the mastery in a particular competency or skill through a test or some of prior learning assessment, so they may be allowed to move to the next level or competency without having to repeat a prescribed course of study for the prior competency. Now, competency-based learning attempts to break away from the regularly scheduled classroom model, which we follow actually, where students study at the same subject matter at the same speed in their own group, the whole, cohort of fellow students. So this is what it is, and the feature of most competency-based program is that you need to, think of problem solving, critical thinking, all this higher level, which now in CBSE we say HOTS, all higher level thinking skills. You should be, able to break down all those questions, and then you move on to the next step. So there I mean, is a chance when you are able to, cope up with all those type of questions, and then you can move on to the next step, wherein, I mean, I would say it cannot fit into the whole group of students. So there maybe because of this, sometimes we think of, to go through competency-based programs, but at a full length, full level, I don't think that it will be, I mean, we will be able to apply it in our education system. So this is what I want to say is competency-based learning is a relatively, new approach to learning, where, we are designing it, which is proving increasingly in a popular way. But again, it does not suit all kind of learners. So we need to work or design our education system in which, all students will be able to gain. Thank you so much from my side. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Dutta. If I may be allowed a follow-up question, and this is something that I've been thinking while listening to all of you talk about competency-based education. We have a three-way system in our school education, right? You have the students, the teachers, and then the problem part, which is the parents' expectations and perceptions. Ma'am, so since you're talking about maybe this not applied uniformly to all students, how does it factor in the parents' expectations? Because different parents have different kind of expectations from their children. So how would they take to it if, let's say, their child is not qualified for competency-based education, or their child is, and the competency that the child is developing is not that they want the child to develop? Mrs. Dutta, if I may start with you. You'll have to unmute yourself, ma'am.
I would request you to proceed with some other speakers.
Sure. Not a problem. Ms. Barara, if you may start.
Yeah, could you just repeat the question?
What I'm saying is, what we are understanding here is that competency-based education talks about students developing competencies in their respective subjects, and it's a highly personalized level learning, right? So what the student wants, or what a certain subject might be a favorite for a particular student, is a factor in all of these. Now, I'm talking about a situation where the parents' anticipations of the student's education start to factor in. The parent wants the child to become an engineer. The child loves history, and the child is spending a lot of time developing competency there. What happens then?
Yeah. Here, again, as I always say, the role of a teacher, the teacher's knowledge, the teacher's perspective, teacher's worldview, everything matters here, right? So there are ways of convincing the parent. If a child is more focused toward history and less inclined towards studying, what is the parent's fear? The parent's fear is, will my child be able to do well in life? What will he do after his subjects? So the mentors, the teachers who are experienced people sitting in the school, they can share inputs with the parents. And then today, there are scientific tests available, psychometric tests available to judge the inclination of the child. We should be using, so the more a teacher knows about what is happening, how it is happening, what can be done, the parent can be convinced. It's not a problem. Ultimately, what is the deep down sentiment of the parent? The parent looks at his child as a success story. And that conviction has to be built in through the teacher and the child. And when one knows what they are doing, how they are doing, why they are doing, it's not a problem. Yes, I wouldn't say that, it's that easy, but when we know on the ground we are standing on, we know our footing, we can do it very well. We need to understand the underlying sentiment. The parent, why is a parent so much inclined for engineering? Because over the last 70 years, they see success stories made there. They haven't seen success stories in other subjects. So they are fearful, what if my child gets stuck? He really doesn't know. He's just a 14-year-old kid. He doesn't know that this subject will not be. But there is information available, there are instances available. So that's why I said that a teacher's view, a teacher's thought process, a teacher's perspective goes a long way in building the competence of the child. So we as leaders, we as thought provokers must focus on empowering our teachers, because they are the ones who will make our children the change makers. So that's how I think.
Wonderful, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for that. Ms. Dutta, if we may come to you next.
Yeah, this is very interesting. What I mean, a doctor parent always thinks, yes, my son is going to become a doctor, and engineer, a teacher. So this is a trend, because they are very much, they know about their own field. So they think that, yes, or, if a mother, like if I have not been able to become a doctor, so my daughter is going to, become a doctor. But this mindset is nowadays changing, and much revolution is going on, overall everywhere. And now the parents are understanding that, yes, we are not here to force our wishes on our children. So yes, they can move ahead. All the subjects, it has its own way to progress. The field is so many. It is vast. They can grow in their own field. And nowadays, I think the parents are not the parent, which we used to have. So now they are understanding, and yes, there are chances that, yes, as Priyanka ma'am said, the teachers, they also, counsel. And yes, now the system has changed. So we are telling, yes, you can take a subject of your choice and you just move on. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Dr. Hota, if I may come to you next. Sir, on this topic of parents only, sir, are you there? We don't have you on camera. Yeah.
What's coming?
Yeah. Thank you so much. So we are talking about the parents and their, like ma'am said, a lot of parents try to live vicariously through their children, right? Their unfinished activities, that the children would go on and complete. Now, when you match this with this competency-based education that we're talking about, right? It flies right in the face of their IIT or NEET or whatever exam aspirations. And do you think, like ma'am is saying, that it is nowadays changing? Do you think this change is uniform, or is it an urban India that has moved ahead and changed, and there are some parts of peri-urban India that has not yet come up with this?
It's a very remarkable question for each and every teachers as well as principal. One side, the parents' expectation, and another side, teachers' mindset. So they are our respectable stakeholder. Definitely, we have to listen them, but there is a space where we can communicate to them, and we will talk with them, and there will be a thin line of hope, and they will be able to understand slowly and gradually. Because maximum parents in our sectors, because we are Chhattisgarh, and that to be countryside schools, so we are not getting such type of problems. But when I was in DPS Bokaro and other places, the engineer, what madam has told, it is absolutely right. The engineers and doctors or any professional, they expect their child also should go into that track. And throughout life, we are preparing as per their wish, or somehow it is overburden, or somehow it is, you can say, pulling theory of them, and they become doctors. But now the question is that about the service of the children towards their parents. Are the parents are satisfied by it? Number of examples are there. They have got doctors, they have got engineers, but are they getting time to serve to the country or real sense or to their parents? So these things we have to highlight in front of them. And because the students now changing to a learner, the teachers to mentor, knowledge transformation to internalizations of learning procedures, and whole classroom scenario is now changing. It is not certificate centering learning. why will think that they will learn to get a job and that to be a professional degree course or go for it? Sometimes it is creating alarming sound for their whole life texture. My dear, that we have to say to them that why you are thinking that my students just like me, they will think about job tomorrow. Why they will not provide job to others? So now it is not like that only talk, chalk, or book or copy. The education scenario is going to be metamorphosis. A new setup is coming, new changes are going on. It is now tech, tool, web, app, education. So a lot of changes are there. And now parents are also realizing that in any field, they will accelerate in the right way. There is ample of opportunities. Students are also able to understand. So whenever we are able to actually convince them, or they will convince by themselves or through this tripolar system, that students, then teachers and parents, they will get the ideas. No, okay, fine. Competency, rat race is all right. And somehow they are in rat trap, the whole parents. So it is better from this competition, let's it come to the competence level of development by which they will able to provide job to others. They will be not job seeker and they will contribute something to the country. So that is most important and we have to go for it. And I think it is possible. If we will convinced by
Wonderful,
our
sir.
own,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
then only we are first, we have to convince by our own. The teachers and the mentors, then we are able to transform it among them.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think, sir, your service orientation, I think I love that. If that is what all the students around the country pick up, we'll have a very different country in a few more years. Mrs. Dutta, sir was just talking about a new form of education, apps, web, how online education is coming to the fore. Do you think this provides a greater chance of personalizing education and therefore CBE? Or do you think this kind of, because you have now 40 faces in tiny windows on a computer screen, does it kind of force the teacher to form a uniform teaching system?
See, I mean, I would say physical education system and am I audible, sir? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We can hear you.
Yeah. So, first of all, I would like to say, as I heard that Satyajit sir is from Bokaro DPS, I am from Bokaro Chinmaya Vidyalaya. So he must be knowing Bokaro is very famous for, good schools. So yeah, now adding it to you. So what it is, sir, I just give me the question once again, please.
Sure, ma'am. What we are saying is now with education becoming at least blended, right? We have been having online classes for the last 2 years. And
yes,
going forward
I
also
it.
a lot of it will
it.
be blended. Yeah.
I got it. So, it has its own advantages. I mean, online has it, you can show so many, though, both has its own ways, but definitely I will go with physical schooling as I'm a school principal because, direct monitoring is very much required. The students, examinations are how much you take a control over the cameras. Yes, they somehow manage to see and write and all this. Their writing skills is taken aback. They are becoming very poor in writing thing, and just every time they can fatafat Google it and write it. That is not possible in physical schooling. So somehow I will definitely go with physical schooling where the teachers can take care of the students and the school principals simultaneously can take a check on the teachers. So this is what it is. So, I mean, if you tell me vice versa, definitely I go with physical schooling, which is definitely required. And though this is a big revolution, online, because totally, shut down. Oh my God, that was a very big shock to everybody. But somehow the world is changing and the world find its own way, how to continue with the things. And so online teaching was there, and like now we are conversing on online platform. It wouldn't have been easy, to make it physical, and won't be easy to reach so many people, those who are watching your show. So in this way, definitely the benefits are also there. Yes, over to you, sir.
Wonderful, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Just in case this is where we are trying to go with online education.
Yes,
Ms. Barara, if I may come to you next, ma'am, do you see not just the online bit of it, but we are seeing a change in the way people approach children's education, right? In the last 2 years, the way we, particularly in India, have looked at school education traditionally has perhaps leapfrogged in terms of online education, in terms of the new education policy, in terms of topics like CBE and others. Do you think the profession of a teacher is going to change radically over the next few years?
Hugely. It's going to change hugely. And if we do not bring in those changes, teachers will become obsolete. So there are changes. And I would say that in the last 2 years, where we were in the online education, we've evolved a bit. We understood the challenges. We've tried to overcome the challenges. We've tried to bring in new tools, different methods of reaching out to children, engaging the children, making up for the loss of their physical presence. So how teachers are going to be looked at, and if we do not change, we are in serious trouble. So there has to be a change in how we are recruiting teachers, how we are grooming teachers, how teachers are being trained at the teacher training colleges. So the aspirations, everything, the positioning of the teacher in the country has to change if we want to bring a change in the overall system. We cannot go on the same way. Teacher has to be a teacher cannot be confined to just the ability of being able to give a few facts from the books. The teacher must have that humane quality of connecting with the child, because without that connection, you don't achieve anything. And it's not about taking one single child to a particular level. The teacher should have the view of taking every child from where he is to another level. Everybody doesn't reach the same level, but what is important is to make the child realize that he has the ability to do something. Everybody is equipped with a skill. Everybody is equipped with an ability, and the teacher must have that quality within himself or herself to bring it out and motivate the child. That is where the real competence of the teacher lies. The connection, the ability to engage the child positively and use the content and the curriculum in a manner that she's constantly focusing on the skill that is to be built. That is extremely important. So there should be a huge change in the way teachers are being positioned in our system.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for that. And since we are running short on time, Satyajit sir, if I may come to you with my last question. We are talking about transformation. We are talking about what's next. So, sir, we would like you to gaze into the crystal ball and tell us, what are those 3 or 4 things that if somebody today were to aspire to become a great teacher, right, and his or her education post-school is starting today, that in 4 years, that person is going to become a teacher. What are those 3 or 4 things that you would want that person to inculcate?
It's lovely questions. In this regards, I will say that teachers, that tea is very important, and this tea will be the tender. The tea should be, very much softer, and soft skill development is essential among the teachers. Teachers have to be empathetic in tone. Teachers should not bother about the syllabus only, and that to be today's syllabus. Rather, teachers should go for the organic syllabus. And teachers have to be trained for the experimental learning. Teachers should be trained for the learning as per the requirement of the time. That is most essential. And we have to go from the physical learning to digital blended learning. And we have to train for it.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. To all three of you, thank you so much for sparing the time to be here today. I know being a Saturday evening, you must be, doing your entire week's roundup, and to spare time for this discussion was fantastic. Where I am sitting today, I am in West Bengal, and we have the Saraswati Puja today. And this was perhaps the best way that we could have asked Ma Saraswati for her blessings. This is a perfect celebration of education. Thank you. Thank you so much for sparing your time to be here today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much,
Thank you to all
Mr.
of you.
Roy.
Thank you.
And I would like to say,
Please, ma'am.
I would like to address to Satyajit sir. I'm also from Bokaro.
Oh, so lovely, ma'am. So
From
lovely.
Chinmaya Vidyalaya. Yes, sir. And
with,
yes,
with Biswas, ma'am.
yes, with Hemalata Vishwas.
Vishwas, ma'am. Okay.
So nice to meet you all. And yes, Mr. Roy, you were a fantastic host. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I extend my thanks and gratitudes to all of you, and giving the beautiful platform of educators to exchange our thoughts, to take share, care, love, and smile through the educational spectrum by the name of Notebook. Heads up to you. Thank you. Thank you very much, with gratitude.
All the best. Nice meeting everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The privilege is entirely ours. Burrett sir, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and to every speaker here. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. To the audience, thank you so much for being here today. We look forward to meeting you again on our next episode of Together for Education. Until then, please stay safe, take care, and goodbye.